the Russians are invading, guess who's going to tell me? You are. The guy down the street, the siren's coming up. If there's an air raid, like, yeah, things are going to be happening. I don't need the news to tell me that. I don't need the news to come in and do that. Why did they give out free digital antennas to everybody when they changed everything over to digital? Because they want us to stay plugged into that. But that's all news. That's all influenced by fear, so that fear can sell. And again, who's contributing the most to the media? We'll just watch it for a couple minutes. You get the first commercial, sponsored by. So, biopsychology, the scientific study of the brain, neurotransmitters, and other aspects of human biology that influence human beings' behaviors, thoughts, and feelings. What does biopsychology tell us? The way that we think is the way that we are. Yeah. Your thoughts are your reality. You can be wrong, but it can be real to you. Try to talk to somebody who's stuck in a state of fear about COVID or the flu or RSV. They're scared. You're not going to change their mind. You really aren't. I got off of Facebook. I started a couple of discussions and they turned into arguments so fast. Like, I'm just trying to help somebody, and somebody comes in and says, you're lying, you're a quack, like, why are you trying to kill people? I did not go to chiropractic school from the ministry to kill people. Like, does that make sense to anybody? And these are my friends that knew me in ministry that are accusing me of this stuff because they're so afraid, because they listen to what's coming at them from all these directions. So we have to isolate ourselves, not isolate ourselves, we have to segregate the information, right? You have to use wisdom to determine what's good and what's bad. If it's coming from a place of fear, is it ever for your benefit? No, it never is, it never can be. So those negative emotions that we experience, though, they actually lead to a decrease in immunity. When you're under stress, emotional, mental, physical stress, it actually lowers your immune system function. Measurably. More so than any other thing. I know you guys saw the sign about sugar in my office, and some of you, that was the reason you showed up. Like, the sugar's coming. Like, Thanksgiving is coming, Christmas is coming. I need to cut the sugar out of my life. But even more so than the sugar, your stress, your anxiety, your fear is going to suppress your immune system. Is there a reason why most of our ancestors through like the 1500s and 1600s didn't live past the age of 30? Because they were just trying to survive. Because they were worried about the Black Death, because they were worried about, the next army coming through and wiping out not just their crops, but just chopping their heads off. You can't live like that. Yeah, infection was part of that, and not having clean water and all these scientific advances. I mean, nobody knew what a toothbrush was. I mean, nobody had teeth either. But part of that is because of that stress. Why didn't they, survive disease? Why did it wipe out half of Europe? Well, they already weren't living past 30. They were already constantly at war with one another. They were already struggling to farm their land and having to get half of it back to the nobles that were taking care of. No, we have to change this emotional state in our bodies. We have to come out of this place of lack and come into a place of abundance. God who made us, who loves us, is going to provide for us. Isn't that what Jesus said?
Yes.
Yeah, I care for the sparrows and the lilies of the field. How much more so do I care for you who is made in his image? Right? We have to do more. So we're a generation living in fear. We've got to come out of that. We've got to do more for our kids. We've got to do more for grandkids. We have to change our paradigm, is really what it comes down to. So pretty much right now, we have two paradigms at war with one another. And this has been the case since Louis Pasteur. Who knows who Louis Pasteur was? He developed the germ theory of disease, right? And what he said is that where a germ is present, there you can find disease. Essentially. Right? What's the problem with that?
Because we'd all be dead.
Right? B.J. Palmer said, if the germ theory of disease was correct, we would all be dead. Why? Because there's more germs inside of our body than there is us. You guys all know that you have an E. coli infection right now, right? It's in your gut where it's supposed to be, where God created it to be. And it has a specific role, and we're just starting to understand that. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of pushed that research to the back of the line during these last 20 months. Because they were just starting to understand that, oh, actually E. coli is good in the right environment. It does some things. Who was taught that your appendix has no purpose?
Oh, yeah.
Who was taught that your gallbladder has no purpose? At some point in the last 50 years, we discovered that every organ system in the body has a purpose. 100 years ago, there was a list of over 100 organs that we would cut out prophylactically, preventatively, so that they wouldn't get infected. Over 100. Now we know that every single one of those has a purpose. That was standard of care. That was what the medical community thought, that the science was settled. Who's heard that? Science is settled, and so we're just going to lop that off. What's the most recent example of that? Cutting off breasts because you have the gene for breast cancer. Does everybody who has the gene for breast cancer get breast cancer? No. Does everybody who has the germ for strep throat get strep throat? Does everybody who has the germ for ulcers get ulcers? H. pylori. The guy won a Nobel Peace Prize for discovering that H. pylori created ulcers. He didn't discover that it created ulcers. He discovered that there was H. pylori in 60% of the people that had ulcers. What else causes ulcers then? There's 40% of the people out there with ulcers that don't have. So, is that true? Is the germ theory true? It can't be. Now, it can have some truth in it, right? The best lies always do. Right? It can have some truth in it. But it really, at the same time that Louis Pasteur was studying the germ theory, his colleague, Beauchamp, was studying the terrain theory. And they were actually colleagues. They worked together across the hallway sometimes, trying to figure out this whole new germ thing. Because they actually, under a microscope, they were seeing viruses and bacteria for the first time, and it was blowing their world, that there was this whole new world underneath and beyond the sight of our eyes. And Pasteur thought it was killing us, and Beauchamp said, no, it's not killing us, because you and I, we can sit in the same room. You might get COVID or the flu or a cold, and I might not, or vice versa. How many people have I laid my hands on, been in the same 6-foot space without masks, that I haven't gotten sick from? If I had to look at my counts of antibodies right now, would I have the antibodies to protect me from COVID?
Probably.
Very likely. I mean, in fact, we were talking last night, some friends at our table, we were at a fundraising dinner for our kids' school, and one of the families was saying, yeah, mom got it, and she isolated herself in the basement, sealed off everything. They only have one bathroom in the house, and so when she needed to go to the bathroom, daughter and dad left the house. Mom went upstairs, used the facilities. Dad came back in, bleached everything down, and then she was in the basement. She was sleeping down there. She would eat her meals down there. She didn't come upstairs except to use the bathroom. 2 weeks in, guess what happens? Daughter gets it. In spite of all the precautions that they took there. Again, why? On the other hand, what happened to the husband?
He did.
He never got it. Guess what they did after the 2 weeks? Yeah, something in the bleach. Yeah. No, something in the bleach. Right? And we see examples after example of this. One of my friends, who's a chiropractor in a different state, in Indianapolis, her mom got COVID. Her dad took care of her the whole time. Never got COVID. Or did he? Who's heard the term microbiome?
Oh, yeah.
Who's heard the term microbiome? Hopefully, because we've been exposing each other to that. We are more bacteria and we are more virus than we are human. It's actually such a huge part of our immune system that there are more bacteria that make up our immune system than anything else. More viruses in our body than there are human cells. It's incredible. And so, how are we passing these things on? Well, touch, in the wind. Plants pass on viruses. Animals pass on viruses. Early theories were that a bat passed this COVID-19 virus to some animal in a lab. I don't care how it started. It happens all the time. There's new strains of new viruses all the time. But guess what? A coronavirus is this. It might be slightly different than other coronaviruses, But guess what? It is also a coronavirus.
Cold.
A cold. A cold is a coronavirus. It doesn't mean that this coronavirus is the same thing as the cold. Yeah, it could be a more virulent strain. I've had more virulent strains. I've had years where I got knocked out for a week by some virulent strain of something. Was it the flu? Was it the cold? I don't care. Because I'm not afraid of it. Because I know what to do to keep myself healthy. And that goes back to the terrain theory. So, which fish here looks healthier?
Aw.
The one that's living in the clean water, right?
I think the one that can fly.
The one that can fly. No, he's jumping. He's using his last legs, his fish have legs, to get from the dirty water to the clean water. Would it make sense, instead of putting this sick fish into a clean bowl of water, to give him a medication that makes him better able to adapt to the dirty environment? To give him a shot, some mRNA, to make him better adapt to the dirty environment? No, let's clean up the environment. And what's the number one environment that we have control over? Our bodies. Our bodies. What we put in and on and around our bodies, what goes through our brains, through our minds, that's going to have the biggest impact on our environment. So we have to focus on the host if we're going to be healthy. Now, what is health? We have to define that, guys, right? And if you've been to a class before, I've defined this for you over and over, and I do that because if you don't understand this, you don't get health. And if you don't get health, you can't get healthy. You're not going to luck into health. Health is something you actually have to work for. Health is a state of 100% optimal function in the ability of the body to heal. 0% function is what? Dead. And this is the World Health Organization's definition of health. This is Dorland's Medical Dictionary's definition of health. You can't be healthy and malfunction. That's the inverse definition. But the problem is, in the United States of America, we don't define health as how you function, but it's how you feel. If you feel fine, you must be healthy. And I have patients that only come to me when they feel bad. It's sad, really. Like, I can't always have that talk. I can't have this talk with everybody. But I always try to, right? You start out here and I defined health for you, and I talked about what controlled it and which functions of the body lead to 100% function or are required to get you to 100% functioning health. But it's not something you hear out there. It's never something you're going to hear from the news. If you're lucky, you'll find a doctor that understands this and helps to coach you along with this. This is why we have to have environments like this where we can come together and we can talk together and learn about what it takes to actually get healthy. Right? So we have to focus on the host. We have to focus on the function. And we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what Scripture says. Right? I praise God because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. We have a natural immune response. Anytime any foreign thing, we call them antigens, ends up inside the bloodstream, what happens? B lymphocytes recognize it. They send a signal to the B helper cells to go out and activate the immune system. It communicates via the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system to communicate with those organs. It sends T killer cells and phagocytes and lymphocytes to come in and surround and destroy the antigens. And in doing so, it also learns about those antigens and creates what? It creates antibodies. So now your immune system has a memory of what it already fought, and guess what? You can't get sick from anymore so long as your function stays at a high level. That virus, guess what? You've never had the same flu. Never in your life have you ever had the same flu. It might have felt like the same flu, but it wasn't the same flu. Why? Because those antibodies for that original flu that you were out for a week with, that you fought off successfully and survived, made you stronger because of that. And so now you can't get the same flu. So why do we get a flu shot?
Because it's not the same.
Because it's not the same flu, right? They make like 3 or 4 different strains of the virus that they identify over in China 4 months before flu season, and then they put it together in their vials, mix it up with a batch of chemicals, and then you inject it into your bloodstream in hopes that having those little components in there, your natural immune system and that natural immune response will create a response. Are we doing that with COVID?
No.
No, there's no part of that virus that's in there. That's not what we're doing. It's not the same thing. The innate immune system. You continue to know what's coming. A lot of people didn't get sick with COVID even though they were working with COVID positive patients because they already had coronavirus infections previously, and they had an innate response that never became symptomatic because they were healthy. They were healthy. There's an adaptive immune system. Now this is the one that tries to get hijacked here. There's a natural adaptive immune system, and that's the one where you get an infection and your body learns it and adapts to it and provides this layer of protection. And then there's an artificial one, and that artificial one is the vaccination program. It does provide an immune response. Does it provide protection? Some research says for that some time it will, and then you need a what?
Get a booster.
A booster. And how many boosters will you need over the course of your life?
We don't know yet.
Good question.
Depends on how long you live,
Yeah.
right? Right? If it goes at the current rate, it's going to be at least one a year. Or at the current rate, it's 3 a year. Right? And so who's making a lot of money off of this?
Pfizer, Moderna,
Yeah. Oh, and guess who has financial interest in all those companies?
the CDC.
Oh, the CDC. And then how many of your senators
Fauci.
actually invest in these companies?
A bunch.
The big three companies there, they're the 6th, 7th, and 8th most invested in companies by your senators. It's not a trustworthy system. These aren't trustworthy people. They're money driven. And which of us aren't, right? The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Right? So we really have to look where our information is coming from. Look at what their interests are. What are your interests? Is it to be healthy? Is it to be functioning? Or as one of the CEOs of one of the big pharmaceutical companies said, is it to make medication as popular as Wrigley's Gum?
I see.
To shareholders, of course, right?
Well, I heard one time they said they're not in it to help people, they have to make money.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's a big business.
Yeah, it's huge
I mean,
business.
it's honest, you have shareholders, but it's
Yeah.
immoral.
I think most CEOs will say the same thing about any business.
Yeah.
We have to make money first. But when you're in health, and when you're here to help people, you have to be there to help people first. And figure out how to make money doing it. If you provide something that people actually need, the money comes. Natural immunity or artificial immunity. It doesn't have to be either or, but the way that it's set up right now, they're really setting it up against each other. They really are. And part of the reason is the truth is being censored right now. Who here has posted something that had a little tag underneath it? From Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Anybody have anything that was completely redacted or got you booted off of Facebook or YouTube? I didn't get booted off of Facebook because I took a huge step back from Facebook. I stopped putting stuff up there. But I definitely was censored on YouTube. Let's look at this. Anybody use Google as a verb right now? Right? I don't do an internet search anymore. I Google it.
Dr. Google.
Yeah, Dr. Google, right? And so, if you go in right now, and then it is a little tailored to who you are, because it learns about you the more stuff you search for.
Yeah.
When you type in GMOs are, it's going to have this predictive text here, isn't it? And now you would assume, right or wrong, that when you type in that the top option here, GMOs are good, would probably be the most searched for term by people that are also typing in GMOs are. Right? That would be the assumption, or the natural assumption. And maybe the second one would be good for you. Maybe some people just type in GMOs are and hit enter, and then some are GMOs are created by because they want to know where it's coming from, and then good for the environment, okay, and then beneficial, and then maybe a little further down the list, harmful for the environment. Good essay, somebody's doing some research on an essay there. Unnatural, somebody's scared of it. Created by Quizlet, somebody's studying what GMOs are in school and trying to learn more about it. I used Quizlet in school. It was a beneficial tool. But when you actually look at what people are searching for, blue, GMOs are good. So yeah, it is searched for somewhat. That was a top search response. Not the most popular though. GMOs are bad, that was the most popular. People are worried about GMOs being bad. And so that's the most, it doesn't mean GMOs are bad, it's just the most searched for. But the information, just the intuitive information that we're being given by Google is saying, no, GMOs are good, should be the top response there. What's this yellow one? GMOs are good for the environment. It wasn't searched for at all in that time frame, but it was the second leading search response when you're doing that in predictive text typing on Google. How about vaccines? There's a lot of debate right now about vaccines. A lot of people don't want to get it because the government's saying you have to get it. I mean, that's my natural response when someone says you have to do something, right? I don't have to do that thing. So what are vaccines? Vaccines cause top response adults. Yeah, vaccines cause adults. That's the top predictive search response when you type in vaccines cause, or at least this person. So vaccines cause adults. It's a meme out there, and people get it printed on T-shirts. It's real. Vaccines cause allergies, SIDS, ADHD, adults, meaning seizures, disease, diabetes, food allergies, asthma. What does it actually show up as? Vaccines cause adults actually did get some hits. I would say probably because people were like, adults. But, or, what was the actual top search term? Vaccines cause autism. What's the first letter of autism and adults? A. You hit that A, and you just hit enter because you see that thing pop up, and it goes to adults instead of what the mom who saw their kid regress. Or someone just got the COVID vaccine and their heart starts doing weird things inside their chest. And all of a sudden they're getting memes that go on a t-shirt about how great vaccines are. Science isn't settled on this, guys. It really isn't. It can't be settled this early. And if we had settled the science on gravity when Isaac Newton got hit in the head by an apple, would we have the Wilbur, or the Wright and Orville Wilbur? Wright brothers?
Right.
Wilbur and Orville Wright. Right? Yeah. Would we have gotten to the moon? No, the science wasn't settled. We just started to understand it. mRNA vaccines, this is the first time we've ever used them, but they've been being researched for the last 10 years. The first patent on them was 10 years ago. We might not have put the coronavirus strain that we have now in there, but we've understood what they do and the mechanisms for the last 10 years. Doesn't mean that we fully understand this. Scientists estimate that we understand less than 30% of the entire human body and what it does right now. And we know more now than maybe since Hippocrates, back at the time of Christ. Does it mean that the science is settled on the human body? I hope not. What do we understand about the central nervous system and its function? Less than 10%. Does that mean that there's not trustworthy information out there? No, there is. It's in science. There's just a lot of censorship going on right now. You can't trust Dr. Google. In fact, GlaxoSmithKline and Google partnered up about 6 years ago to start researching together. And this was a red flag for us. Back before there were huge concerns about Google doing stuff. But you get the information company and the pharmaceutical company in bed together, and they're going to come up with some pretty nasty looking babies. Right? 10 years ago, I was at a seminar, and we were talking about how a lot of the patents of a lot of the drugs were running out, and how the next move, the next wave in the vaccine company, or in the pharmaceutical companies would be vaccines, that they were trying to get more vaccines out there for more things. And it's true. How many of us had 72 different vaccines by the time we were 10 years old, growing up? None of us. Because when I was born in the 80s, it was 6. But our kids, how many did they get? 72. Yeah. Maybe not 72 injections, but 72 different strains of different viruses running through their bodies at a given time. And all the side effects that come along with it. In the United States right now, it is not required that you receive any documentation for informed consent for vaccines. But every other medical procedure requires. The inequity is stunning. It really is. We have to do something differently. We really do. We Who knows about Lake Erie? In the 1970s, what was it pronounced? Dead. Do not swim in it. Fish are swimming up onto land to get out of it. They're sick and dying. Now, what would have happened if the scientists, the biologists had said, I know what we should do? Animal hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
That will solve the problem. We need to create a drug that makes these fish better adapted to swim in that lake, in that dirty lake. Why was it dirty? Because industry had set up along the streams and along the shoreline and dumped all their waste into it. So what did we know to do? What did biology know to do? Because of science, stop the dumping, right? And so there's a lot of industry regulation, but then clean it up. Get the junk out of there. Create filtration systems. And then what happens? Like here's a lab again. This is it today. There's actually green in the water. People can swim in it. Maybe it's not the best one to swim in, but you can. You can go to Cedar Point. You can go to their water park. You can swim on their beaches. But what are we doing with our health right now?
The dead fish thing.
We're setting up the hospitals. We're calling in the National Guard. Put the tents out in the parking lots. Everybody stay home. That's where we're at. We believe we were designed to do. There's literally 350 offices across the country that in the last 4 weeks have done this exact same makeover with dozens to hundreds of patients in their offices, equipping people to take their health back into their own hands. Because it's not about me. It's not about me treating you. It's not about me giving you the latest adjustment or the latest supplement. It's about you having the knowledge